Chapter 78. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. Look at the 1,000-year Bodhi heart. With a thought from Su Qin, a faint golden 1,000-year Bodhi heart with mysterious patterns on its surface appeared in front of Su Qin. As soon as this 1,000-year Bodhi heart appeared, Su Qin felt an aura of enlightenment envelop him. Under this aura, Su Qin found that his thinking speed increased by several times, and he became extremely clear-headed and rational. Even the Arhat's true essence in his body became extremely smooth. As expected of the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, Su Qin was amazed. He had tried the Bodhi heart before Tarahan's Dharmakaya passed away. But unfortunately, the Bodhi heart that Tarahan had could only make Su Qin slightly clear-headed. As for the rest, it had no effect at all. Compared to the 1,000-year Bodhi heart in front of Su Qin, it was as good as nothing. After Su Qin played with the 1,000-year Bodhi heart for a while, he turned his gaze and looked at the entire back mountain forbidden area. Devil Buddha, Su Qin sighed softly. 900 years ago, it could be said that the Shaolin Temple was at its most prosperous period. In the same era, 2 Arhat, Pao and Devil Buddha, were born. 2 Arhat in one sect. This was simply inconceivable. But unfortunately, it didn't take long for the Shaolin Temple's prosperity to decline. For 900 years, even if the Devil Buddha was suppressed, every 100 years he would split out a strand of devil will to bewitch the Shaolin Temple disciples and form the Devil Buddha's descendants, constantly depleting the Shaolin Temple's foundation. Otherwise, even if Tarahan had passed away in a hurry, and the most powerful divine skill, Buddha's palm, had suddenly been lost. 900 years have passed. The Shaolin Temple may not have given birth to a venerable Arhat, but it is not to the point where there is no grade 1 great grandmaster in this generation. They were almost squeezed out of the great sects of the world. According to the information Pao left behind on the stone wall, although the Devil Buddha is stronger than him, there is a limit to his strength. At most, Pao is at the 2nd firmament? Su Qin pondered slowly. And after being suppressed for 900 years, the Devil Buddha even gave up his physical body in order to survive, surviving as a devil will. His strength has probably fallen below Arhat's level. Su Qin stood up. It's time to get rid of the Devil Buddha once and for all. Su Qin made up his mind. 10 years ago, Su Qin quietly entered the forbidden area of the back mountain in order to sign in. And he also met the Devil Buddha face to face. At that time, the Devil Buddha disguised himself as an enlightened monk and tried to bewitch Su Qin, trying to take away Su Qin's physical body and get rid of the suppression of the seal. Unfortunately, the Devil Buddha didn't expect that the Golden Buddha in Su Qin's ancestral aperture could easily control the sealing power of the Buddha's palm in the forbidden area of the back mountain. In this case, not only did the Devil Buddha not get rid of the suppression of the seal, but Su Qin also reconsolidated the seal and completely suppressed him. Although the Devil Buddha has been suppressed by me again, he is still a hidden danger. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Su Qin also obtained the Devil Will Split Parasitism technique. He knew that even if the Devil Buddha gave up his physical body and survived as a devil will, he could at most live for more than 1,000 years. If this continued, the devil will would also decay. In other words, even if Su Qin didn't care about anything now, the Devil Buddha would slowly die under the suppression of the seal after more than 100 years. But Su Qin was still worried. Since the Devil Buddha could create the Devil Will Split Parasitism technique and obtain Shoyuan, who far surpassed Venerable Arhat, would he create another secret technique to continue living? In Su Qin's eyes, the most unreliable method was suppression. It was fine for ordinary people, but for a genius with terrifying aptitude like the Devil Buddha, as long as he didn't die, he might be able to break free from the shackles in the future and soar into the sky. Su Qin felt that such a genius would only be at ease if he killed him with his own hands. 900 years ago, Tarahan couldn't do anything to the Devil Buddha, so he had no choice but to suppress him. But today, 900 years later, Su Qin was no longer Tarahan. With Su Qin's current strength, coupled with the countless methods and trump cards he had, and even the Buddha's palm, even if the Devil Buddha was at his peak, he would have to admit defeat when facing Su Qin, let alone after being suppressed for 900 years. Open. With a thought, Su Qin communicated with the golden Buddha in the ancestral aperture between his eyebrows and used it to control the sealing power of the entire forbidden area in the back mountain. Instantly. Rumble. The forbidden area in the back mountain began to rumble. With the forbidden area in the back mountain as the origin, the entire Shaolin Temple also shook. The seal of the forbidden area in the back mountain was created by Karahan, using the Buddha's palm, and the entire Shaolin Temple to suppress the Devil Buddha. If he wanted to open the seal, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. What happened? Why is there such a vibration? Abbot Huiwen and the court heads' expressions changed, and they looked in the direction of the back mountain almost at the same time. Is it the forbidden area in the back mountain? What's going on? The commandment court head looked dignified. The Devil Buddha was suppressed in the forbidden area in the back mountain. If something went wrong, it would be a disaster for the entire Shaolin Temple. The other court heads also realized this, and their expressions were extremely ugly. Why are you panicking? The Venerable is also in the forbidden area in the back mountain. No matter what happens with the Venerable here, our Shaolin Temple will definitely be able to get through safely. Seeing the court heads' expressions change, Abbot Huiwen immediately reprimanded them. As soon as these words came out, the court heads suddenly came to their senses. What were they worried about? With the Venerable guarding the forbidden area in the back mountain, even if the Devil Buddha really escaped, what could he do? In the forbidden area in the back mountain, as the seal continued to open, a hole full of dark demonic light appeared. Billowing demonic aura loomed in the hole, slowly spreading in all directions. Ha! I'm finally out. After 900 years, I'm finally out. A terrifying demonic voice came from the depths of the dark hole, full of a strong sense of ecstasy. Then, an illusory demonic shadow came out, raised its right hand, and touched the air as if it was feeling something. The next moment, the illusory demonic shadow raised its head and looked at Su Qin. So it's you, little monk. The illusory demonic shadow smiled, revealing a trace of cruelty. Since you dare to let me out, it seems that you're quite confident? The illusory demonic shadow looked at Su Qin with interest and said with pity, although I don't know why you have the Tathagata's will. But under the absolute gap in strength, you will know what true despair is. The illusory demonic shadow's words were full of strong confidence. The Tathagata's will was incredible, but the premise was that one had to have enough strength to activate it. You've entered grade 1 at such a young age, you do have potential, the illusory demonic shadow said while looking at Su Qin. However, the next moment, the illusory demonic shadow seemed to have discovered something, and its expression suddenly changed. No, you're not grade 1. You're Venerable Arhat? The illusory demonic shadow's pupils dilated, and its face was full of horror. Chapter 79. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. A huge wave of emotions surged in the Phantom's heart. How rare was the Venerable Arhat? Even with his talent, it took him 100 years to barely step into this realm. And this was because Karahan spent a lot of effort to guide him and even used his blood essence to shape his body. His terrifying talent, coupled with the unique conditions, created the Phantom to reach the Arhat realm in 100 years. But what about Su Qin? The Phantom knew very well that this generation of Shaolin Temple had no Venerable Arhat. Since Karahan passed away 900 years ago, the Shaolin Temple had never given birth to another Venerable Arhat. In other words, Su Qin became Venerable Arhat all by himself. Thinking of this, the Phantom couldn't help but feel cold all over. 10 years ago, when Su Qin was strengthening the seal, the Phantom was very sure that Su Qin's bone age was definitely not more than 30 years old. Now he was at most 40 years old. A 40-year-old Venerable Arhat? The Phantom only felt his scalp go numb. Now he had been suppressed for 900 years, abandoned his body, and struggled at death's door in the form of a demonic will. His strength had plummeted by a lot. If Su Qin was still first grade, the Phantom was confident that he could deal with him. At the very least, he could escape unscathed. But a Venerable Arhat. Master, let's talk nicely. Since you let me out, there must be something you need me for. As long as you say it, I will definitely do it. The phantom didn't dare to continue to call himself this venerable. He wanted to temporarily surrender and save his life first. No need. Su Qin was too lazy to talk nonsense and moved his mind. Suddenly, a small square seal appeared in the void. This small seal was pitch black as if it came from the dark demon abyss. There were still traces of blood at the corners. It was the demon suppression seal. It was the last treasure Su Qin obtained from the demons subduing tower of the Shaolin Temple. It was known as the nemesis of all demonic cultivators. Rumble. As soon as the devil suppressing seal appeared, it continued to expand, covering more than half of the sky and slowly falling towards the illusory devil shadow. This is? Extreme fear appeared in the demonic illusion's eyes. As soon as the small seal appeared, the demonic figure felt its strength being suppressed by half. As the small seal grew larger and larger, the suppression also grew heavier and heavier. It was as if the world was collapsing. Ah! The demonic illusory shadow roared again and again, instantly using dozens of life-saving secret techniques in an attempt to stop the demon suppressing seal's suppression. However, it was a pity. Against the devil suppressing seal, all of the methods of the devil shadow were like a gentle breeze, unable to withstand a single blow. A moment later, under the suppression of the devil suppressing seal, the illusory devil figure completely collapsed. Even the hole he walked out of was also crushed into powder by the devil suppressing seal. This thing is convenient. Su Qin looked at the devil suppressing seal that had returned to its original state and was quite satisfied. Although Su Qin could also deal with the devil Buddha without using the devil suppressing seal, with this devil suppressing seal, Su Qin didn't even need to lift his hand. Of course, the devil Buddha had been suppressed for 900 years and his strength was less than 1%, but the devil suppressing seal's ability to restrain the world's devil Dao was also very exaggerated. After retracting the devil suppressing seal, Su Qin returned to his original position and sat cross-legged. Since the devil Buddha had completely fallen, the sealing power of the Buddha's palm left in the forbidden area of the back mountain was naturally absorbed by Su Qin. Pure land in the palm? Su Qin slowly felt the sealing power, a thoughtful look on his face. 900 years ago, Tu Arahan suppressed the devil Buddha with the third move of the Buddha's palm, pure land in the palm. At the same time, outside the forbidden area of the back mountain, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads widened their eyes in disbelief. The aura of the devil Buddha has disappeared. It's completely gone, the disciplinary court head whispered, full of disbelief. The other court heads, including Abbot Huiwen, had similar expressions. Just now, they felt a devil chi from the forbidden area of the back mountain from afar. This devil chi was the same as the aura of the true nature of the devil Buddha's successor more than a decade ago. The moment the devil chi appeared, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads' expressions changed greatly, because they realized that it was very likely that the devil Buddha had escaped from the seal. However, before Abbot Huiwen and the others could speak, the aura that symbolized the devil Buddha completely disappeared. This kind of disappearance was not the kind of disappearance that was suppressed back, but a complete annihilation, vanishing into thin air. The devil Buddha's calamity is completely resolved. The warrior monastery head was in disbelief. Since the birth of the devil Buddha 900 years ago, he almost destroyed the Shaolin Temple. Although he was finally suppressed by Arahan, the successor of the devil Buddha that appears once every 100 years has been consuming the Shaolin Temple like maggots. In this generation of the Shaolin Temple, there is not even a grade 1 great grandmaster, which has a lot to do with the successor of the devil Buddha. But now, if Abbot Huiwen and the court heads are right, the devil Buddha that was suppressed in the back mountain has completely disappeared. Once the devil Buddha disappears, the successor of the devil Buddha, who originated from the devil Buddha, will naturally not appear again. In other words, from today onwards, the Shaolin Temple no longer needs to go through a catastrophe every 100 years. It was the venerable who did it. Abbot Huiwen looked at the back mountain with awe in his eyes. The other court heads looked solemn and also looked at the back mountain with great respect. They can't remember how many times Su Qin has helped the Shaolin Temple. Without Su Qin, the Shaolin Temple would have been destroyed long ago. Su Qin has saved the Shaolin Temple many times, and now he has helped the Shaolin Temple solve the problem of the Devil Buddha. For the Shaolin Temple, how can Abbot Huiwen and the court heads not be in awe? Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. For Abbot Huiwen and the court heads, and even for the entire Shaolin Temple, he has completely solved the problem of the Devil Buddha. But in Su Qin's eyes, it was just a small matter. It was nothing at all. Even Su Qin felt a little bored. The Devil Buddha, who had been sealed and suppressed for 900 years, didn't give Su Qin any pressure at all. Su Qin didn't even move his hand and solved it with the demon suppression seal. Next, Su Qin returned to his usual peaceful life. Except for signing in every day and occasionally giving advice to Xianxia, Su Qin was basically cultivating. It has to be said that with the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, Su Qin's comprehension of heaven and earth has improved by leaps and bounds. Coupled with the past Amitabha Sutra's refinement of heaven and earth's essence qi and the sufficient supply of lustrous golden core, Su Qin's cultivation has grown so fast that it is almost approaching the speed of the 9th grade martial Dao. Time passed slowly. A year passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. Finally, the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer. Su Qin smiled. Chapter 80. Arhat level of cultivation is really difficult. It took me a year to reach the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer. Su Qin sighed softly, his expression slightly emotional. At this moment, Su Qin's true essence was like a river, constantly surging in his body, and his qi and blood were like an endless ocean. At this level of martial Dao, it was completely out of the scope of human beings. It was easy to destroy Hui City. Since I'm at the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer, I can consider breaking through. Su Qin thought silently. Arhat had 9 layers of heaven, and the gap between each layer was far greater than the 9 grades of martial Dao. But there's no rush, take it slow. I'll wait for a while before breaking through. Su Qin's thoughts flew, and he did not choose to break through rashly. Compared to the cultivation of the 9 grades of martial Dao, Arhat level involves the control of the power of heaven and earth, and needs to be more cautious. When he was at the 9th grade of martial Dao, even if there was a problem in cultivation, Su Qin could rely on his strong body to withstand it. But the cultivation of Arhat level, if something went wrong, the impact on Su Qin would be great. In this case, even if Su Qin thought that he was at the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer, he still needed some time to recuperate and adjust his state. Anyway, Su Qin was different from those old immortals who were close to the end of the Shoyuan. He still had more than 700 years, and he was not in a hurry. 3 months later, Su Qin had adjusted his state to the best. I can break through. Su Qin sat cross-legged in the forbidden area of the back mountain. In an instant, the true essence was running according to the past Amitabha Sutra. Voila! The whole forbidden area of the back mountain once again set off a storm of qi of heaven and earth, and continued to spread in all directions. Suddenly, a storm of qi of heaven and earth appeared again in the sky above the Shaolin Temple. However, the disciples of the Shaolin Temple were obviously used to it and did not make a fuss for the first time. After all, in the past few years, there would be a phenomenon every once in a while. Even the timid disciples were not surprised. The Venerable One has broken through again. No matter how numb the court heads were, there was still a trace of shock in their hearts. Didn't the ancient books of the Shaolin Temple record that the cultivation of the Venerable Arhat was as difficult as ascending to heaven? Why was it that when it came to Su Qin, breaking through seemed as easy as eating and drinking? Back Mountain Forbidden Area. As the boundless heaven-earth essence qi surged towards Su Qin, one glazed golden core after another was stuffed into Su Qin's mouth like jelly beans. Su Qin's breakthrough was also coming to an end. A moment later, 3rd layer of heaven, I've finally succeeded. Su Qin opened his eyes, a trace of joy appearing on his face. The breakthrough this time was still the same as before. There weren't any great waves and there weren't any accidents. This feeling of power, Su Qin took a deep breath. After reaching the peak of the second celestial layer, his strength was more than twice as strong as when he first entered the second celestial layer. Su Qin could clearly feel the huge power in his body, as if it could break the void in front of him. Of course, Su Qin knew in his heart that this was an illusion after the surge of power. Not to mention the third celestial layer Arhat, even the invincible ninth celestial layer Arhat couldn't break through the void. After breaking through and stepping into the third celestial layer Arhat, Su Qin didn't have any complacency. He was still addicted to cultivation day after day. During this period, Abbot Huiwen officially announced that Xian Ku was this generation's Buddha of the Shaolin Temple. Regarding this title, no one in the younger generation of the Shaolin Temple had any objection. Over the years, they had watched Xian Ku step by step become a martial artist in the middle realm. Naturally, they were convinced. One must know that even the Zhen generation, which was one generation higher than the Xian generation, was mostly hovering in the lower realm, let alone the Xian generation. Except for Xian Ku, the other disciples of the Xian generation were basically between the 9th and 8th grade. Not to mention the middle realm, there wasn't even a 7th grade. In addition, Xian Ku often received guidance from the Venerable in the Back Mountains Forbidden Area. In the entire Shaolin Temple, no one thought that Xian Ku was not worthy of being the Shaolin Temple's Buddha. On this day, Xian Ku came to the Back Mountains Forbidden Area and asked to see Su Qin. Venerable, this disciple is preparing to go down the mountain and enter the world in a month. Xian Ku stood respectfully in front of Su Qin and said in a low voice, "Go down the mountain and enter the world?" Su Qin looked at Xian Ku with a smile on his face. Xian Ku said seriously, "It is recorded in the Buddhist scriptures that there are great temptations and great risks in the secular world, but only by experiencing the secular world can one cross the sea of suffering and reach the other side. This is your business. As long as you decide to do it, then do it." Su Qin shook his head and said indifferently. In fact, even if Xian Ku did not plan to go down the mountain and enter the world now, in a few years, Su Qin would let him go down the mountain. What did the Shaolin Temple rely on as a martial arts sect in the world? Buddhist scriptures? Buddhism? Don't joke. The Shaolin Temple stood tall in the world and was the head of the 4 Buddhist temples. It had always relied on strength. Without strength, the Shaolin Temple would have been destroyed many times over. If you want to improve your strength, you can't just immerse yourself in hard work. More importantly, you have to go down the mountain and travel, and verify with the martial artists in the world. This was also the reason why the Shaolin Temple sent disciples down the mountain every generation. One was to promote the reputation of the Shaolin Temple, and the other was to train the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. It was not only the Shaolin Temple, but also the major sects in the world. For example, thousands of years ago, the youngest disciple of perfected Zhang of the Wudong Mountain went down the mountain and challenged the heroes of the world. "Thank you, Venerable One." Xian Ku heard that Su Qin had no objections and quickly replied, "You may leave." Su Qin waved his hand and said, "Yes." Xian Ku immediately left the forbidden area in the back mountain respectfully. Late at night, the full moon hung high in the sky. The sign-in opportunity has refreshed. Su Qin's figure flashed and appeared outside the Bodhi Court. The Bodhi Court was the place where the Shaolin Temple's pills were produced. It could be said to be one of the most important places in the Shaolin Temple. There were a large number of patrolling monks guarding it 24 hours a day. However, with Su Qin's strength, even if he walked in front of these patrolling monks, they wouldn't be able to notice him. System, sign in. Su Qin stood in front of the Bodhi Court and said in his heart, "Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill." 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill? Su Qin's eyes lit up. The 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was the same as the glazed golden core. It was a sacred pill on the level of Arhat. However, the medicinal power of the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was several times that of the glazed golden core. If the glazed golden core was like a slow stream, then the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was like a surging river. This was also the reason why Su Qin had been taking the glazed golden core all these years and not the 9 revolutions whirling pill. This was because Su Qin's previous physical body couldn't withstand the violent medicinal power of the 9 revolutions whirling pill. Now that I have stepped into the 3rd heavenly layer, can I try to take the 9 revolutions whirling pill? This thought flashed through Su Qin's mind. Chapter 81. Outside the Bodhi court. Su Qin's mind was in turmoil. Forget it. For now, the glazed golden pill is the most suitable for me. If I take the 9 revolutions whirling pill rashly, I might be able to absorb it, but I will definitely waste a large portion of its medicinal properties. It's not worth it. Su Qin shook his head. After all, he had less 9 revolutions whirling pills than glazed golden pills. He had less than 500 pills in total. He had to use them sparingly. According to the ancient records in the Shaolin Temple, compared to Arhat's 1st to 3rd heaven, the 4th heaven will undergo some kind of qualitative change. It won't be too late to take the 9 revolutions whirling pill then. Su Qin was in a good mood. He turned around and returned to the forbidden area in the back mountain. Time passed slowly. A month later, before Xianxia left the mountain and entered the world, he came to the forbidden area in the back mountain to bid farewell to Su Qin. Venerable One, I'm leaving today. Xianxia looked a little disappointed. Although he had been prepared for this, it was not until now that he realized how lively and lovely the plants and trees in the Shaolin Temple were. However, entering the world to cultivate was something Xianxia had to do as the Arhat of the Shaolin Temple. Perhaps other disciples could find excuses, but Xianxia could not avoid it. I've taught you for so many years. Let me give you a small gift before you leave. Su Qin sat cross-legged, raised his right hand, and took out an exquisite wooden sword the size of a palm. The wooden sword was very ordinary. It seemed to be carved from the most common wood in the Shaolin Temple. Thank you, Venerable One. Xianxia liked the wooden sword very much. He wore it around his neck and hung it in front of his chest. You may leave. Su Qin waved his hand. Xianxia respectfully left the forbidden area in the back mountain. It's been so many years, Su Qin felt a little emotional. The little acolyte in his teens was now ready to leave the mountain and enter the world. With that wooden sword, there shouldn't be any danger. Su Qin thought casually. The palm-sized wooden sword that Su Qin gave to Xianxia was naturally carved by him casually. However, Su Qin had left behind a strand of sword intent within the wooden sword. That sword intent was formed with the Dharma sword art as the foundation. Once Xianxia was in danger of death, this sword intent would be activated. And with Su Qin's current strength, if the sword intent in the wooden sword is really stimulated, even if he can't kill a legend, he can kill a grade 1 great grandmaster. This was also a life-saving measure that Su Qin had left for Xianxia. After all, Xianxia had entered the secular world to cultivate, not to die. Even if they really encountered a life and death crisis, they couldn't really let Xianxia die. However, Su Qin didn't think that Xianxia's life would be in danger. The Shaolin Temple is a great sect, and Xianxia is the current Buddha. Once he really leaves the mountain and enters the world, the various sects and forces will more or less give him some face. Even if they don't have a good impression of the Shaolin Temple, it is impossible for them to kill Xianxia. After all, what's the point of killing Xianxia? In addition to completely angering a great sect like the Shaolin Temple, what other benefits can there be? After Xianxia left the back mountain, he went straight out of the Shaolin Temple. Outside the Shaolin Temple, the sky was high and the ground was wide. Xianxia walked all the way, and when he encountered injustice, he saved people, and when he encountered people who died unjustly, he chanted sutras. After a period of time, Xianxia also met many disciples of other sects in the Jianghu. These disciples were basically the same as Xianxia. They entered the world to temper themselves and prove themselves. Among them was Xianxia, the youngest disciple of perfected Zhang of the Wudang sect. It was said that Xianxia finished the Tai Chi mental path on Wudang Mountain before he was 10 years old, and directly alarmed perfected Zhang, who had been in seclusion for many years. Zhang Xiao had entered the world a few years earlier than Xianku. He had already been in the Jianghu for a while and had even earned the title of Little Perfected Master. Other than Zhang Xiao, there were also disciples of other great sects in the Jianghu. These disciples all came from the righteous sects, and what they did in the world was basically chivalrous. Little monk, I heard that an Arhat appeared in the Shaolin temple. Is it true? Zhang Xiao, who was wearing a Taoist robe, asked in boredom. He had always been carefree and unrestrained. Other than perfected Zhang, he was not afraid of anyone. Namo Amitba, Xianku put his palms together and did not answer. Before entering the world, Abbot Huiwen had told Xianku not to reveal any information about Su Qin. Zhang Xiao, stop teasing Xianku. A girl next to him glared at Zhang Xiao and said unhappily, Lu Rumei, why are you speaking up for the little monk? Do you like him? Zhang Xiao teased. You. The girl named Lu Rumei drew her long sword and slashed at Zhang Xiao. A faint sword chi swept past. Zhang Xiao's body suddenly flashed and he took a few steps back. You crazy woman, you really dare to attack? When the others saw this scene, not only did they not come forward to mediate, but they also watched the show. They were all disciples of the righteous sects, and naturally knew when to stop. Whether it was Zhang Xiao or Lu Rumei, they stopped after testing the waters a little. They would not really fight. At the same time, inside a villa, several silhouettes stood there quietly. These figures were obviously powerful martial artists, especially the leader, a man with a hooked nose. His aura was surging and enveloping the surroundings. He was a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Villa Lord, we have investigated clearly. Wudong Mountain's Daoist Zhang's pro-disciple, Zhang Xiao, will pass by here tomorrow. At this time, a man in black walked in and knelt down in front of the hooked-nosed man. Is this true? The hooked-nosed man's eyes lit up and he immediately asked. According to the route, unless they go back the way they came, they will inevitably pass by here. The man in black said without hesitation. That's good. That's good. The hooked-nosed man laughed wildly, and his expression became colder and colder. Daoist Zhang, 30 years ago, you killed my son, causing my bloodline to end. Now, I will kill your youngest disciple as a sacrifice to my son's soul in heaven. The hooked-nosed man said word by word. The rest of the people present immediately lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at the hooked-nosed man. Villa Lord, what if we kill Zhang Xiao and provoke Daoist Zhang to come out for revenge? A figure standing next to the hooked-nosed man asked. The hooked-nosed man shook his head. Don't worry, if it was somewhere else, there would be too many people and I wouldn't dare to kill Zhang Xiao. But here, when the hooked-nosed man said this, a smile appeared on his face. If we kill Zhang Xiao here, no one will know. The hooked-nosed man's face was full of confidence. With his strength as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, if he wanted to kill Zhang Xiao, he would have done so long ago. The reason why he waited until now was to wait for a foolproof opportunity. And now, the opportunity had finally arrived. Chapter 82. The next day, Xianku and the disciples of the other sects walked through a wasteland and stopped in front of a villa. Let's go in and rest for a while. Someone couldn't help but suggest. Most of them were martial artists in the Middle Realm. Although they had internal strength to protect their bodies, it was impossible for them to really go without sleep. Okay. Zhang Xiao glanced at the villa and nodded in agreement after confirming that there was no problem. Wait a minute. At this time, Xianku suddenly spoke. Let's not rest here. Xianku was silent for a while and said, when Xianku looked at this villa just now, he always had an inexplicable feeling of fear. Although Xianku didn't know why, he also realized that this was a warning from his Buddha's heart. Not resting here? Zhang Xiao was slightly taken aback and looked at Xianku, frowning. What do you mean? I don't know, I just feel that this villa is very dangerous. Xianku shook his head and explained. Regarding the warning from the Buddha's heart, it was a mystery. He didn't know how to explain it, so he could only say what he felt. Dangerous? Zhang Xiao looked back at the villa again. In that case, let's not stop and leave directly. Xianxia thought for a while and immediately said. When the others heard this, although they were a little dissatisfied, they didn't say anything. 4 martial artists like them, even if they were a little tired, they could still support themselves. However, just when Xianku and others were about to leave, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded. Since you're here, did you ask me if you want to leave? A man with an aquiline nose slowly walked over. The moment the aquiline nose man appeared, dozens of men in black quietly surrounded Xianku and others. Trouble. Xianxia looked dignified. At this moment, how could he not know that his group had fallen into a trap? May I ask who you are? My master is Wudang Daoist Zhang. Xianxia reported his name without hesitation. The aquiline-nosed man not far away gave Xianxia an extremely dangerous feeling. Although Xianxia did not know how strong the hook-nosed man was, it was obvious that he was far stronger than him. Under such circumstances, Xianxia naturally wouldn't think of challenging them. He directly reported his background, which was more direct than anything else. The others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. In their opinion, Immortal Zhang of Wudang Mountain was famous all over the world. Once the other party knew that they were related to Immortal Zhang, they would definitely let them go. However, when the hook-nosed man heard the words Daoist Zhang, not only did he not show any fear, he even laughed heartily. Daoist Zhang? The one I killed was Daoist Zhang's disciple. The hook-nosed man laughed wildly. Men, take them down. Immediately, dozens of men in black rushed up without hesitation. Suddenly, a Lao Dao priest in a Taoist robe appeared and grabbed Zhang Zhao's shoulder, trying to escape. Martial uncle? Why you here? When Zhang Zhao saw the Lao Dao officer, he was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. The Lao Dao officer was his martial uncle, a second-level supreme power master of Wudang Mountain. Zhang Zhao himself didn't expect to see his martial uncle here. Ha! I found you long ago. The hook-nosed man not far away sneered, raised his right hand and pressed toward the Lao Dao officer. Buzz! A powerful force pierced through the air and landed on the old Daoist's body. Puff! The Lao Dao officer's face immediately turned red and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He took a few steps back and almost sat on the ground. You should be Zhang Zhao's protector, right? The hook-nosed man looked at the Lao Dao officer and said slowly. With Zhang Zhao's identity, how could there be no one to protect him when he went down the mountain? The hook-nosed man didn't make a move just now because he was waiting for these people to come out. And you all of you come out? The hook-nosed man turned his eyes and looked at the others. May I know who you are? If I remember correctly, we don't know you? One after another, figures came out from the dark and looked at the hook-nosed man and asked in a deep voice. Indeed, I don't know you. The hook-nosed man's face showed a trace of coldness. But since you are here, then go to hell. In an instant, the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster erupted. The expressions of the upper realm martial artists who were hiding in the dark to protect their disciples changed greatly. They flew out one after another and fell to the ground. Can't even withstand a single blow. The hook-nosed man smiled contemptuously. With his strength as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, suppressing these protectors was as simple as drinking water and eating. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the major sects suddenly felt their hands and feet go cold. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that their family's elders would not even be able to withstand a single blow from that hook-nosed man. You guys go. Run as far as you can. At this moment, the Lao Dao officer of Wudang Mountain suddenly shouted. When these words came out, everyone sobered up. The most important thing now is not to stand in place and wait, but to escape alive. A trace of ridicule appeared on the hook-nosed man's face. How can these disciples, who are not even in the upper realm, escape from the hands of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster like him? Let's go. Zhang Zhao retreated to Xianku's side and quickly said, Martial uncle just told me that he will use a secret technique to delay that person for a while. We should take advantage of this opportunity to escape. Then let's run together. Lu Rumei said with a trembling voice. She is of noble birth. When has she ever been frightened like this? It is already good that she can still stand at this moment. Okay. Xianxia nodded. At this moment, although he was in crisis, Xianxia felt unprecedentedly sober. Just as Xianxia's voice fell, the aura of the Lao Dao officer of Wudong Mountains suddenly soared and he rushed towards the hook-nosed man. A secret technique? The hook-nosed man shook his head and took a step forward. He appeared beside the Lao Dao officer and suddenly punched. Boom! The Lao Dao officer's face suddenly turned as white as paper and he fell to the ground and fainted. This, Zhang Zhao's face was extremely ugly. Lu Rumei next to him was so scared that her legs trembled. They didn't expect that the Lao Dao officer who used a secret technique would still be so weak. I'm not going to play with you anymore. The hook-nosed man's face showed impatience. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed Zhang Zhao. Don't worry, you won't die so easily. I will let you taste the most extreme torture in the world before I send you down. The hook-nosed man looked at Zhang Zhao with eyes full of cruelty. It's over. Zhang Zhao's face was ashen. At this moment, his internal strength was sealed by the hook-nosed man. He couldn't even commit suicide. As for you, I have no enmity with you, but you saw something you shouldn't have seen. The hook-nosed man turned his gaze and looked at Xianxia and the others. He raised his left hand and terrifying internal strength surged. He wanted to smash Xianxia and the others into meat paste. What to do? What to do? The other disciples were already scared out of their wits and subconsciously ran in all directions. Even their elders in the upper realm died here, let alone them, the younger generation? Lu Rumei's face was also pale. She was so scared that she hid behind Xianxia and closed her eyes, waiting for death. Little monk Xianxia, I didn't expect that I would die with you. Lu Rumei muttered to herself. With death at hand, Lu Rumei suddenly felt relaxed. Namo Amitabha. If I don't go to hell, who will? Xianxia stepped out and rushed towards the hook-nosed man. Although Xianxia knew that he was going to die, but at this moment, between dying on his knees and dying standing, he obviously chose the latter. You little bald donkey, your courage is not bad. The hook-nosed man shook his head slightly and said, but it's a pity, in front of me, courage is meaningless. The hook-nosed man's expression was cold. His left hand suddenly changed and a terrifying pressure quickly shrouded the field. Boom! Xianxia felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his consciousness began to blur. Am I going to die? Scenes appeared in Xianxia's mind, and finally stopped on Su Qin, who was sitting cross-legged in the back mountain. At last, I have seen the Venerable for the last time, just as Xianxia calmly welcomed death. The palm-sized ordinary wooden sword that he had been wearing around his neck and hanging in front of his chest quietly began to vibrate. Cut! The wooden sword moved without wind, floating in the void, the tip of the sword pointed upwards, and slowly slashed towards the hook-nosed man. What is that? The hook-nosed man was a grade 1 great grandmaster and immediately noticed the palm-sized wooden sword on Xianxia's neck. Not good. The hook-nosed man felt a sense of life and death crisis in his heart and was about to retreat. However, at this time, the palm-sized wooden sword on Xianxia's neck slashed down. An extremely illusory sword intent condensed from the void and slashed towards the hook-nosed man. No one can describe the sharpness of this sword. When this sword slashed out, it was as if even the void was cut in two. In the eyes of the hook-nosed man, he only saw a sword intent permeating the air. This sword intent crossed a distance of hundreds of meters in an instant and easily cut through the hook-nosed man's internal strength and directly cut him in two. The remaining sword intent swept through and penetrated the villa behind the hook-nosed man. Rumble! A smooth fracture suddenly appeared in the middle of the huge villa, and it continued to crack and spread. The entire villa was divided into two in an instant. Everyone who saw all this was suddenly stunned and their minds went blank. Chapter 83. Many sect disciples who were preparing to flee were suddenly stunned when they saw this scene. They never dreamed that the hook-nosed man who easily suppressed many upper realm martial artists would be cut in two so easily. That sword light just now, the Lao Dao cultivator of Wudong Mountain had just woken up from his coma when he saw the sword light that destroyed everything. Under that sword light, the void, heaven and earth's essence qi seemed to have been cut off. Everything in the world was overshadowed by that sword light. Even if senior brother personally made a move, it would be impossible for him to make such a move, the Lao Dao cultivator of Wudong Mountain muttered to himself. He looked lost as if he was still immersed in the sword light just now. I survived? Xianxia fell to the ground with a thud, but he didn't feel any pain. Instead, his face was filled with ecstasy. Just now, the hatred of the hook-nosed man towards him was almost overflowing. Xianxia didn't need to think to know that if he really fell into the hands of the other party, he would definitely beg for death. I was almost hit by that sword light just now. Xianxia still had lingering fear. Unlike the others who saw the sword light from a distance, Xianxia, who was caught in the hook-nosed man's hand just now, almost looked directly at the sword light coming towards him. According to the power displayed by the sword light just now, Xianxia almost didn't need to think to know that once he was touched by the sword light, he would be no different from the hook-nosed man. The Manor Lord is dead? The hook-nosed man's men trembled and their faces were full of fear. Although they didn't know what happened to the sword light just now, the hook-nosed man really died in front of them. What should we do now? Several men in black looked at each other and suddenly wanted to retreat. Without the hook-nosed man, their strength was greatly reduced. Not to mention killing this group of sect disciples, if they were not careful, they might even be killed. Let's go. These men in black made a decision almost instantly. If the hook-nosed man was still alive, they naturally wouldn't dare to disobey the orders of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. But now that the hook-nosed man's body was cold, if they didn't leave now, when would they? What if that sword light came again? Wouldn't all of them die here? Bush. Instantly, these black-clothed men disappeared one after another. At this moment, the disciples on the scene did not pay any attention to these black-clothed men. Their gazes were all fixed on Xianku. Xianku was also at a loss. He was just waiting for death. With the strength of the hook-nosed man, killing a middle realm cultivator like him would be too easy. The Venerable One gave me a wooden sword? Xianku lowered his head and looked at the wooden sword still hanging around his neck. At this moment, the wooden sword had once again returned to its normal state. However, there were a few faintly discernible cracks on the edge of the wooden sword. Just when Xianku was in a daze, the other sect disciples walked over cautiously and stopped 10 meters away from Xianku. They looked at Xianku curiously, as if they wanted to say something but didn't dare to. They are all heaven's chosen of their respective sects. Although they don't know what happened to the sword light just now, they obviously know that it has something to do with Xianku. Xianku, what happened just now? At this moment, Xianxia, who had almost recovered, walked over and looked at Xianku and couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, many sect disciples' eyes lit up and their ears pricked up. They wanted to hear what Xianku had to say. What happened? Xianku blinked and didn't know what to say. The wooden sword was given to him by the Venerable. That sword light just now could only be left in the wooden sword by the Venerable. Suddenly, a low voice sounded. Xianxia, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The Lao Dao disciple of Wudong Mountain quickly walked over and glared at Xianxia. Then, under everyone's incredulous gaze, the Lao Dao disciple bowed deeply to Xianku. Thank you for your help. We of Wudong Mountain will remember it. If anything happens in the future, we will definitely repay you. The Lao Dao disciple's words came from the bottom of his heart. These words were not said to Xianku, but to show goodwill to the existence who had just slashed out the sword light. The Lao Dao disciple was a second-grade Supreme Power Master. In addition, he stayed with Zhenrenzhang of Wudong Mountain all year round. Whether it was eyesight or other things, he was naturally far from a young disciple like Xianxia. Based on the sword light just now, the Lao Dao disciple could conclude that the rumor that the real Arhat had walked out of the Shaolin Temple was probably true. Except for the high and mighty Venerable Arhat, who could slash out such a powerful sword light. When the elders of the other sects saw this scene, their expressions changed slightly. They immediately bowed deeply to Xian Ku, or to be precise, to the palm-sized exquisite wooden sword hanging around Xian Ku's neck. Next, because of the hook-nosed man, many sect disciples were naturally not interested in continuing to travel around the world. Under the urging of their elders, they hurriedly returned. Especially the Lao Dao disciple of Wudong Mountain. At this moment, how could he not know that the hook-nosed man came for Xianxia? As for the disciples of the other sects, they were probably implicated by Wudong Mountain. Wudong Mountain is famous in the world, and Jinrenzhong is a peak grade 1 great grandmaster standing at the peak of the world. But now they almost failed. How could the Lao Dao disciple not be angry? Thinking of this, the Lao Dao disciple hurried back to Wudong Mountain with Zhang Xiao to investigate the origin of the hook-nosed man and why he had a grudge with Wudong Mountain. Shaolin Temple. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Just when the palm-sized exquisite wooden sword hanging around Xian Ku's neck slashed out, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. The sword intent was activated? Su Qin's eyes were thoughtful. In the wooden sword he gave to Xian Ku, there was a sword intent condensed from the Dharma sword technique. This sword intent was left by Su Qin. Even if it was far away, once it was activated, Su Qin could roughly feel it. Did he encounter a life and death crisis? Su Qin's expression remained unchanged, and he thought silently in his heart. Only when Xian Ku encountered an unstoppable force will the sword intent in the wooden sword be stimulated. The crisis has passed. Su Qin carefully felt for a while and whispered to himself. The sword intent he left in the wooden sword could slash out 3 times. Now that Su Qin felt that the wooden sword was completely immersed after the first slash, he knew that Xian Ku was almost safe at this moment. Otherwise, the remaining sword intent in the wooden sword would have continued to slash out the remaining 2 slashes instead of being immersed. Chapter 84. However, what on earth could cause a life and death crisis for Xian Ku? Su Qin was slightly curious. Others may not know, but Su Qin, as the Venerable Arhat, can see everything in the Shaolin Temple with his divine sense. Just when Xian Ku left the Shaolin Temple and entered the cultivation world, the Dharma Court's head also disappeared from the Shaolin Temple. Obviously, the Dharma Court's head was ordered by Abbot Huiwen to secretly follow Xian Ku to protect him. It should be known that in addition to Abbot Huiwen, a grade 1 great grandmaster, the Shaolin Temple only has 2 grade 2 great grandmasters. To be able to spare one to protect Xian Ku is already extremely important. In fact, if it weren't for Abbot Huiwen being unable to leave and having to stay in the Shaolin Temple, he would have wanted to protect Xian Ku. Because Xian Ku is too important to the Shaolin Temple. But even so, with a grade 2 great grandmaster protecting him in the dark, Xian Ku still stimulated the sword intent in the wooden sword. Because of this, Su Qin was a little interested. However, although Su Qin was a little curious, he didn't care very much. What a pity! Whether it's the sword intent or divine sense, they all come from me. If one day I fall, these sword intent and divine sense will quickly dissipate as if they have no source. Su Qin sighed softly. This is also the reason why the Shaolin Temple has been in decline for thousands of years and many venerable Arhat have come out. Perhaps when Arhat was alive, the Shaolin Temple was famous in the world and no one dared to provoke them, but once venerable Arhat passed away, everything was different. No matter what happens, my own strength is still the most important thing, Su Qin sighed. If he was strong enough to have an immortal golden body like Buddha, indestructible for all eternity, then what in the world would be able to stop him? Thinking of this, Su Qin once again immersed himself in cultivation. Since entering the 3rd heaven, Su Qin's cultivation speed had obviously slowed down a little, but the slow here was equivalent to the 9th level of martial arts. Compared to the venerable Arhat of the Shaolin Temple or the martial arts legends of Jianghu, Su Qin's cultivation speed was still so fast that it was shocking. As Su Qin breathed in and out, the yuan qi of the entire back mountain shook along with his breathing. Time passed slowly. One day later, in the Dharma court, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads gathered together again. Huiju sent a letter, Xianxia was ambushed by a Grade 1 great-grandmaster on his journey. Abbot Huiwen looked at the court heads and said in a deep voice, Huiju is the Dharma court head and belongs to the Hui generation of disciples, along with Abbot Huiwen. The Dharma court heads secretly followed Xianxia out of the Shaolin temple. The other disciples may not know, but the court heads present are clear about it. This is also the result of the discussion between the court heads and Abbot Huiwen. Although the Shaolin Temple is a great sect and ordinary forces do not dare to provoke the Shaolin Temple, but it is better to be safe than sorry. With Xianxia's potential, coupled with Su Qin's guidance, he may not be able to achieve the Venerable Arhat, but he can at least reach the height of the Mengyuan Imperial Teacher and Daoist Zhang in the future. How could the Shaolin Temple not have a backup plan for such a rare genius? However, the court heads had never expected that Xianxia, who had entered the secular world to cultivate, would still encounter danger despite all their preparations. Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster? Which Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster dared to kill the Shaolin Temple's son of Buddha? The warrior monastery head was furious and stood up abruptly. The other court heads also had ugly expressions. In their view, in the face of a Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster's attack, Xianxia should not have survived. After all, no matter how great one's potential is, it still takes time to accumulate. Don't worry, Xianxia is fine. Abbot Huiwen glanced around and said, The court head's eyes widened in disbelief. They couldn't figure out how Xianxia, with his strength in the middle realm, managed to save his life from a Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster. Before the Venerable left, he gave Xianxia a wooden sword. It was this wooden sword that released a shocking sword intent and killed the Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster. A smile appeared on Abbot Huiwen's face. Wooden sword? Killed a Great-Grandmaster? The court heads looked at each other. The shock in their hearts could be imagined. They were very clear about Su Qin's strength. Not to mention a Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster, even a Grade 1 Great Perfection would be vulnerable in front of the Venerable. But what the court heads did not expect was that Su Qin only relied on a wooden sword to kill a Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster from an unknown distance. Is he still human? Although the Venerable Arhat is invincible, a Grade 1 Great-Grandmaster is not an ant. The Venerable is the reincarnation of Buddha. How can we peek into his methods? After a long while, the head of the disciplinary hall murmured in a low voice, his eyes filled with awe. It's time to sign in. Su Qin leisurely came to the scripture pavilion, his thoughts fluctuating. During this time, in order to make up for the consumption of the glazed golden core, Su Qin has been signing in at the Bodhi court and has not come to the scripture pavilion for a long time. System, sign in. Su Qin said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the array diagram, Essence Gathering Holy Land. Array diagram? Essence Gathering Holy Land? Su Qin's eyes lit up, and he immediately understood what the sign-in thing was. It should be some kind of heaven and earth array. Su Qin thought silently. After entering the martial Dao realm of Venerable Arhat or legend, one can comprehend the heavens and earth and master the power of heaven and earth. Some Venerables Arhat have created some heaven and earth arrays. The effects of these heaven and earth arrays are different. Some are inclined towards concealment, some are inclined towards suppression, and some are inclined towards healing. For example, the demon-subduing tower of the Shaolin Temple and the stone gate of the place where Tu Arahan died are all protected by heaven and earth arrays. In the past 20 years, Su Qin has also signed in dozens of heaven and earth array diagrams. Now, this essence-gathering Holy Land must also be some kind of heaven and earth array. Just as Su Qin was thinking, everything about the essence-gathering Holy Land flooded his mind. After a while, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes. I didn't expect it to be a heaven and earth array that gathers world's essence chi. Su Qin was very satisfied. This was the first time he obtained this kind of heaven and earth array. One must know that martial Dao cultivation under the upper realm doesn't rely on world's essence chi, but once one reaches the upper realm, one needs to use world's essence chi to cleanse the body. At this time, the importance of world's essence chi will be revealed. The richer the world's essence chi, the greater the benefits to martial artists. Even if an ordinary person stays in a place with rich world's essence qi for a long time, they will not get sick and their lifespan will be prolonged. Shaolin Temple is a great martial Dao sect in the world, and it has produced venerable arhat, so the place where it is located naturally has sufficient world's essence qi. However, this world's essence qi is more than enough for ordinary martial artists, but in the eyes of venerable arhat Su Qin, it is not enough. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.